Hello and welcome to Top Story. Former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto and current President General Pervez Musharraf say they've reached an agreement on national accord after weeks of negotiations. The power-sharing deal could change the face of Pakistani politics. Speaking in London before the announcement of the accord, Bhutto said she wanted an understanding that would pave the way for a transition towards democracy. Musharraf is expected to be re-elected as president by Parliament on Saturday, but Bhutto and her powerful Pakistan People's Party, the PPP, had threatened to boycott the vote unless he declared an amnesty, dropping corruption charges against her and other politicians. A boycott would deprive the election of legitimacy in the eyes of the Pakistani people. Bhutto also wants Musharraf to repeal a law banning anyone from being Prime Minister more than twice, legislation that rules out both her and Musharraf's other great rival, Nawaz Sharif. Musharraf had earlier conceded to one of Bhutto's demands by promising to step down as army chief by November the 15th if he's re-elected president. Well, joining me now to discuss the Musharraf-Bhutto talks is Mariam Abu Zahab, a specialist on the region at the Institute of Political Studies here in Paris. Thanks very much for being on Top Story. Just how important a deal for Musharraf is this with Benazir Bhutto?
Well, it's very important for him because it's his survival which is at stake. And Musharraf, if he wants to have some legitimacy, he had to make this deal with Benazir Bhutto.
But at what cost? At what price?
The price is he had to concede absolutely everything because Benazir Bhutto knew very well that Musharraf needed at least her neutrality to be re-elected as president, because if the PPP lawmakers had boycotted or had resigned, like some of the opposition parliamentarians did.
Let's go through those demands that she's made. First of all, that the corruption charges be dropped against her.
Yeah.
Was there any substance to the corruption charges?
There was to some extent, yes, but that was not really a problem. Everybody knew that once she wanted to come back to Pakistan, that problem could be solved. That was not a big problem.
And the second one, that she should be allowed, or people should be allowed, to stand more than twice as Prime Minister. That clears the way both for her and the other big rival to Musharraf, Nawaz Sharif.
Nawaz Sharif, but that was more complicated because the PMLQ, which supports Musharraf, they were very much against that, and that was very difficult from Musharraf's side.
And yet he has made the concession. So why do you think? Is it because he just felt that the pressure was so big that without the support of Bhutto and her PPP party that his political career was really coming towards the buffers?
Definitely, and there has been also considerable American pressure that he should make a deal with Benazir Bhutto. Benazir had been negotiating for over 3 years, but the Americans were not receptive in the beginning. But since last summer, when elections became very near, that's why the Americans and also the British became involved and tried to reach a deal, because it's the only way that Musharraf can survive, if he opens political space. And the PPP is the party which is the most acceptable to the West, because Nawaz Sharif is seen as pro-Islamist and anti-American in the West.
So without the American backing, Musharraf is finished, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's obvious. It's kind of insurance policy for Musharraf is Washington support. And as long as he has the support of the Americans, he knows he will survive, because they still need him in the war against terror.
Well, as I was going to say, it works both ways. They need him as much as he needs them.
He needs them, exactly.
So that there is a sort of pact there between them which is unbreakable unless Benazir Bhutto appears on the scene and starts to answer to Washington's interests as well.
Yeah, that's what she made a few statements last week which were not well received in Pakistan about AQ Khan. She said that she would give access to foreign agencies to interrogate him, and then she said also that she was not against American intervention in the tribal areas in case she had some information that some important Al-Qaeda members were in the tribal areas, which of course is a problem for the sovereignty of Pakistan. This was not well received in Pakistan, and she appeared just like the mouthpiece of the Americans in Pakistan.
Well, let's just look at Benazir Bhutto for a second, because she's often presented in the West as a champion of democracy, and indeed has been presenting these talks with Musharraf as talks to prepare the way for transition to democracy. Yet her own record in Pakistan isn't that great, and she has been Prime Minister twice after all.
Yeah. Yeah, and she was not exactly a Democrat. She's kind of very, concentrating all the power, even in the party. She's chairman of the People's Party for life. And those negotiations were really between Benazir and Musharraf's envoy, but the other people in the party, they were not part of the negotiations. And this created a lot of problems, particularly among the old guard. They were very much against negotiating with the military dictator, as they say, and they said it was totally against the principles which the PPP had stood for. And so that's why Benazir Bhutto, she is having a problem with the old guard, the founding members, those who were her father's companions. That's why when she goes back to Pakistan, she will reach Karachi and she wants to go to Larkana and start there going to her father's shrine, because she got a shrine built when she was prime minister, and just to try to invoke this heritage. That's, that people think that she's following in her father's footsteps, which is not.
And the plan is that she should return on October the 18th.
Yes, and all the militants are getting ready and everything to give her a very huge welcome. When she came back from exile in '86, she reached in Lahore and there were over 1 million people to welcome her. So they are trying to make this welcome even bigger.
Is there any particular significance in October the 18th, or is it just giving herself plenty of time to prepare for the parliamentary elections, which are due at the end of this year?
Yes, it's just to give her time, enough time after the presidential elections, and then she will have nearly 2 months to get ready for the parliamentary elections.
And just how critical are they going to be? I mean, she is backed by, she's the head of the Pakistan People's Party, the PPP. They are the biggest party. It is the biggest party in Pakistan. Does she have their complete support?
To some extent, because she's been negotiating with the military dictator, and people don't want Musharraf with or without uniform. But the man in the street in Pakistan, he wants to get rid of Musharraf not because he wants democracy, because particularly in Punjab, in the rural areas, people, they're saying that military government brings security and stability, and democracy, they don't believe in democracy. They've seen in the 90s what happened. But they don't want Musharraf because of inflation, because of high prices, because of the cost of living, because of unemployment. That's why they want to get rid of him.
Very briefly, because we're running out of time, can you imagine a President Musharraf without a military uniform? Because he does say he's going to step out of the army on November the 15th.
Well, it seems this time, yes, because he's designated a successor. But that's very difficult, because Musharraf without his second skin, as he calls it, it's very difficult because he loses all his support and all his influence. So it's going to be very difficult. And Musharraf as president and Benazir Bhutto as prime minister also, I'm not sure it can work.
I'm going to have to stop you there, I'm afraid. That's all we have time for today. Thanks to Mariam Abu Zahab of the Institute of Political Studies here in Paris. Join us again next week for another edition of Top Story. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.